So you want to include all of this rant on our podcast?
No.
Okay. Nate, be sure not to include that on the podcast.
None of that should be on the podcast.
We will get in a lot of trouble.
A lot.
Okay, welcome to the 3% Podcast. This is Chad Post from Open Letter Books. I'm here with Tom Roberge from Albertine Bookstore and from New Directions. And today we are going to talk about advertising and book advertising, which...
Well, yes, book advertising. I don't really care about, Mercedes-Benz's Super Bowl ad buys. But, yeah, I know it just sort of came up yesterday. We were texting about something else and thought... we should just talk about this. And partly because I'm curious because we're on the inside, and I think a lot of our listeners are, at least, the people who don't work in publishing are readers. And I wonder, where they see ads factoring into how they read or what they buy and where they see them and if they even register and that sort of thing. I'm curious. It's very hard to have an unbiased opinion about ads like this, I think. The same way that, my girlfriend looks through a copy of Artforum and, she's reading the articles, but she knows every gallery that's paid for an ad in Artforum and has opinions and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's very hard to be unbiased about this thing. So, let's just talk very generally. So when I started at New Directions, my position was, the very lofty title of publicity and marketing director, which meant I signed off on all ads. And, New Directions does not make a lot of money. And my general theory on ads, and this has been true since I was at a public space literary magazine and then at Penguin even, is either you go all in and you advertise like crazy because it takes a certain number of impressions to make an impact on an individual person. Mm-hmm. They used to say 7 or whatever. I don't know what these numbers mean. But the idea being that, you have to see or be reminded of something several times before you go through the process of actually purchasing something, right?
Right.
So the idea that New Directions pays for an ad in one magazine and that it's going to affect anything, any terms of sales, to me, which is ludicrous. Even if we're talking about a fairly cheap ad, if we're saying, and I'm just throwing out numbers that this is not, I don't remember exactly what ads cost, because all ads are sort of negotiable if anyone didn't know that.
Right.
Say we spend $500 for one ad in a sort of literary magazine that comes out monthly or, quarterly. That's not going to affect sales. No. And that's just $500 we wasted. Or you go the other route and you buy an ad in that magazine and 6 others just like it, all coming out at the same time in the hopes that, your intended audience will see it more than once because they read more than just the one magazine. They read maybe 2 or 3 of these magazines. And then ideally one of these is something that's so gigantic, that is such circulation, the New York Review of Books, for example, mm-hmm. that, you're just hammering home the point. To me, that's how you do advertising. New Directions, of course, could not afford that.
Right.
So to me, I just put a moratorium on it, and that was that. And honestly, and our sales still went up because we were doing other things instead. It's not hard to make ads. It takes me half an hour on InDesign to make an ad, put it out, whatever. But, if I could take that half an hour that I did 6 times or whatever, specs, emailing, whatever, and spent it on reaching out to booksellers who would promote the book in the store and have a pile and recommend it, those are actual sales, and to me, that's how I've always looked at it. I don't know. Do you guys advertise at all?
We advertise every once in a great while. What I was going to say real quick about your $500 thing is you could use that $500 to make galleys to give to booksellers that will have a larger impact than the ad will.
Oh, of course. Exactly. You print another, 20 galleys of every book you do and, reach more booksellers. Exactly.
We advertised for a while for just a couple $100 in Book Forum. We do one book as part of it, and it was more to support the magazine than it was to support that book.
Yes, Book Forum has a thing where, like, for independent presses, they have this. It's like a one-page.
I have it in front of me. I'm trying to find it, actually, so I'm flipping through.
It's a half page, I think, right? Vertical, and then it's just a long list of 12 titles. I'm guessing 14.
You know what? It's not in here this time. In the new issue, there isn't. Oh, wait. Here it is. It's one page, and it's highlights from independent publishers. And this month's one has things from Siglio Press, Calamari Archive, Coffee House, Soho, Tupelo, Feminist Press, House Publishing, Ugly Duckling, Wave Books, and Schaffner Press.
How many was that? 10?
It is 10, yeah.
So, and yeah, they're, negotiable, but they're around $250 and cheaper if you buy more, if you sign up for whatever, the whole year or half a year, whatever. I feel like, I don't know that matters in the long run. And if you, as Open Letter, or we as New Directions, did that every month, and every month somebody saw that and said, oh, New Directions, New Directions, New Directions, New Directions, I can see that being, some sort of, attempt at getting a foothold with people's attention. I don't know that they're then going to take that extra step. Mind you, this is a print thing you're looking at. Yeah. They're going to take that extra step, go online, look up the New Directions website, and then that'll lead to sales. I mean, it's just so many steps involved trying to get somebody to buy something based on that I don't know. I didn't see it as worth it. So I stopped doing it. And we used to do this thing at Book Forum, and I had stopped it. And part of my argument was it's not doing anything. And then I really dislike the idea that, like, to support the magazine.
Well, or you could say, in hopes that they will actually review one of your books one day.
Which is even worse. That is, I fully believe in separation of church and state, advertising and editorial, right?
I agree with you, but do you think that that's always the case?
I think it is at the New York Review of Books and at the New York Times and everything like that.
Yeah. Right? I don't know. I don't know.
It's the New York Review of Books, totally.
The New York Review of Books, yeah. The New York Times, probably.
Or New Yorker. I mean, everywhere with, like, wide reach, it is totally separate, yes.
Yeah, it would be, But some of these other ones?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I always hated, and I'm not going to name names, but there is one magazine I'm thinking of in particular, that every time we would have something in there, I would get this special email like,
yep,
your author is appearing on page 32. Can I sell you an ad? And it's like,
yep.
Oh, God.
That happens a lot. That happens, and we'll probably switch in a second here from talking about print ads to online ads. There's online places that's happened with us a lot recently. But yeah, I mean, there's not so much, like, even that they would just pay. We haven't done it in I don't know how long, to be honest, and no one's even asked us about it. And it was never worth it. Though the thing I think that not so much that they would have reviewed the books, but if we're getting a lot of reviews for a book, or if it's on, like, NPR, it has some major coverage, to have the book cover on that page, not so much the open letter part of it, but just that cover might be a bit of a reminder of, like, oh, I've heard about this enough, where it's not even creating that impression so that you remember to go online to check it out, but that it gives you the impression that it's important. Like, you've heard about it enough times that it leaves a positive impression of this book on your mind, rather than just a neutral one. And I think that's the best you could hope for with an ad like that. And I doubt that it happens in more than, like, 4 people for any given ad.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you can't just, like, do this, like, scattershot, one-off sort of advertising. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying advertising doesn't work. I'm saying you really need to go all out for it to be effective.
Yeah.
And I think most small presses, unfortunately, just can't afford it because
it's insanely expensive.
And I have all this pulled up. Some interesting notes you might be curious to know. So Book Forum does not publish their ad rates online.
Really? Huh. That's curious.
I really thought they had.
I thought so too.
They do not.
Weird.
On the other hand, wow, does the New York Times?
Yeah, they do.
They thorough. So, full center spread. New York Times Sunday Book Review. $88,000.
Which is more than any employee of Open Letter will ever make.
$88,000. Now, to give you some perspective, that's 10, maybe more, 10 times more expensive than New Directions pays for books to publish them. Can you imagine our budget to do that? So this is why the only books that get advertised in a full center spread in the New York Times are the new James Patterson or 50 Shades of Grey or Stephen King, because much like movies and other expensive things, the cost, like a car, it costs millions of dollars to develop a new car, right? So the advertising budget is a percentage of the development cost, and same for publishing, I think. And so if the book only costs you whatever, let's say there's the advance and the translation and, man hours of the employees and rent and blah, 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 40,000, you're getting a percentage of that devoted to marketing or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's never going to add up to $90,000 for us.
No.
But it will for Random House or Penguin or, Simon & Schuster or Hachette. So that's why you never see, independent press books advertised in this way. Unless, they win the National Book Award and somebody decides that it's, a one-time thing and it was probably gifted by someone and, that sort of thing.
Way back in the day at Delkey, one of our funding situations with a private foundation included, I think it was $5,000 that had to be spent on advertising the book that was part of that funding program, and that was the only time that we took out ads there too. And it would be like 4 ads, because a lot of the places that you'd want to advertise in to make it like an impressive to your donor are very expensive. Where even Harper's or The Nation are a few $1,000s.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking now at, I've switched over to the New York Review of Books. They also have, similar to Book Forum, an independent press listing, which has 15 titles on a page. I mean, it's a bigger page, but, and it's $217 per title, then you get a break if you do it more often. Right. You get a certain number of words, you get the cover. It's a lot like Book Forum's thing. Mm-hmm. It's not crazy to do this kind of thing. I can see why, a marketing person at, Feminist Press or Coffee House would do this. I just, unless you're doing this in every magazine that offers something like this.
There is something to the advertising of those, though, with those presses in particular, and with Delkey and Open Letter, of that you can then say to your funders or to potential funders or in grants that as part of our program, we do advertise in these magazines and have that as evidence that you're not just like taking their money and not spending it on marketing, because I think ads to those people mean more than they do to us and are more than like sales. So if it somehow like it convinces a funder that you are actively trying to sell your books or actively trying to spread the word on your books, and they give you a check for $1,000, it sort of offsets itself.
Right. I will say that I appreciate New York Review of Books ad rate cards, because they actually point out here total paid circulation of 138,000 copies, by the way.
That's a lot.
And the readers, I assume they do extensive marketing research here on their subscribers and readers. They buy about 38 books a year.
Wow.
And they have a book buying profile here. It says 66% of the books they bought were history, 64% literary fiction. So
that makes sense. It's just crazy.
It seems to me like if you're going to spend the $200, New York Review of Books is the way to go.
Yeah. You just bash Book Forums.
Sorry. Look, they need to make money. I get it. Yeah. And what am I looking for? Oh, print advertising in New York Review of Books is not cheap. But
how much is a full page ad in the New York Review of Books?
$13,000.
Okay, so
they have a publisher's rate, by the way.
I'm going to blow your mind here for a second. The one that I found that's the most expensive ever is AARP magazine.
No.
How much is one page, 4-color, national circulation? Do you want to guess?
$150,000?
$359,450.
Shit.
Yep. And I've always used this as an example of that. They are the group of individuals with disposable income and time. So like, and a lot of these ads in AARP are not books. They're going to be for medicines, health things, things that are like impactful for people over the age of 50. But yeah, $359,000.
Good God.
It's crazy.
One last thing in the New York Review of Books, I went to their web advertising, which doesn't really make sense to me, I hate to admit. Like the rates, I mean.
Yeah.
You do have traffic information. So 2.5 million page views per month, which is spread out over 850,000 unique visitors.
That's solid.
That's a lot of return visitors and a lot of visitors, period.
Mm-hmm.
Demographics. This is horrible. 69% male.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
That I wouldn't have expected.
It makes no sense to me.
So many of them are like, so many book buyers are
Women?
Are women. Huh. That's very strange.
Very, very strange.
And have you guys ever advertised online?
No, we don't usually. No. Do you?
No. I keep getting bugged by one place that really wants us to take out an ad. It's like a daily newsletter, one of the daily newsletters. And initially I was like, well, maybe for one of our authors, because it might be like a good thing for them, and it'd be important for like Andres Newman. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, that's just not going to make any sense.
I think we've done shelf awareness.
That is the one that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it too, and I'm just not sure.
I don't remember how much it costs.
$500.
Yeah, it's not horrible. It goes to a lot of people.
It does go to a lot of people.
A lot of dedicated people.
Yeah.
But I mean, the problem is they do it every day, and they're 2 or 3 a day. It's just you stop paying attention, you know.
This is for like the bottom part, not for like the top. Which is the next question I was going to ask you. When was the last time you noticed an ad that had any impact on your mind?
Online?
Or no, on your mind personally, like that you remembered it, noticed that this book was being advertised, did anything with that piece of information at all?
I really could not tell you because I have ad blocker on all my browsers.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't see any ads online.
But even in print, I don't pay attention to them at all.
Yeah, I read the New Yorker and the New York Times Magazine and the book review, and I really can't think of the last one that meant anything to me.
I can't either. Like, I just don't pay attention to them at all. I had this sort of related conversation with my students in the publishing class yesterday, where I'm getting them to do like a marketing plan sort of thing for our upcoming books, and we're talking about different ways that you could publicize or promote a book. And I talked to them about book trailers, which they were astonishingly more into than I have ever seen any other class.
I wanted to talk about this too. Yeah.
But the one that they mentioned was that they see advertisements on TV for James Patterson a lot.
What TV shows do they watch?
I don't know, but you've not seen this either? Okay, so I hadn't seen it, and I can put this on the listing, but there are a series of James Patterson advertisements that exist that are apparently run late at night. Maybe, I don't know what they're on, but there's a ton of commercials that he does, and he's there talking about them. So he has like these 15-second, 20-second commercials. One of them that I have right here is called Treasure Hunters commercial, and it's for his like pirate book, and he's dressed like a pirate with an eye patch and like bandana on.
You're making this up.
I am not making this up at all. Like, I go to YouTube and just put in James Patterson commercial, and it's like the third one down. Like, I don't understand why. So I've never seen these. I've watched a lot of TV, but I think I watched the wrong thing. Sports TV advertises very peculiar items. Like that.
This is true. There were those advertisements for like the Kindle that existed, but that was about it.
Yeah, those are trippy to me, to be honest. Like,
yeah, I don't think we watch enough reruns of Law and Order or
It's like every CSI ever. Yeah, what are my children watching? My students watching that they are seeing these commercials.
It's very strange. I mean, I feel like I've seen the most random. Like if you watch ESPN at 2 in the morning or whatever, or ESPN 2 at 2 in the morning, you will see like strange commercials for not necessarily individual books, but like the kind of series things. Like, I don't want to say Game of Thrones, but you know what I mean. Something along those lines where like there's a series of books and, you know, you should read them all or get hooked and whatever. And obviously it had made no impact because I can't remember any of the titles, but
wasn't there I found it here, the David Reese's How to Sharpen Pencils. Melville hosted that commercial.
Yes. Kelly Burdick, who used to work there, told me that you can buy up like late night advertising,
right?
What are they called? Remnants,
through Google, I believe.
Cheap. They're dirt cheap. Yeah.
How when you say dirt cheap, what do you mean?
Oh, it's costing them like a few $100s
for each time that airs.
Yeah.
Right.
They air like the most obscure random times on the most random channels.
Like things that no one ever. I never saw that ad.
3 or whatever, you know, like.
Yeah, I never saw that ad at all. Actually,
I don't know if it worked. I mean, but they were just trying it out.
Yeah,
you know? They committed some money to it, and Kelly and I agree. Like, you know, you either do it or you don't. And I think he was like, "We're just going to buy a shitload of remnants and see what happens." And
right. They didn't do it again after that, did they?
I don't think so. So I'm guessing it did not work.
That's what I was thinking too. It's always striking to me, like when people make these trailers, like the one that I feel is the most well known is the Steingart Super Sad True Love Story one.
Okay, I have not seen this. I hate book trailers. I really don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I cannot wrap my head around why they exist, what they're trying to do. It's just, it does not work for me. Reading is a thing where you like read words and put an image in your own head, and the words should contribute to the formation of that image. I do not want a director's version of that. There's we looked at 3 of them yesterday as examples. And there's one, the Mystery Guest that FSG did, in which it's made like a movie trailer with like blurbs from people in the middle. It's filmed as if it's like a trailer for a movie, or as if that is not a book, as if it were a commercial for a movie specifically. I think one of the quotes is even Virginia Woolf as if filmed by Woody Allen is one of the blurbs that's in the middle of this. So that was like one particular thing. Then there's like the Steingart one that's basically just a big long parody joke about how he can't read and he's making up his whole Russian thing, and James Franco's in it, and what's her name, writer of Victoria, Mary Gateskill, and a few other big name authors that have like cameo Edmund White, and making fun of Gary Steingart, making him seem like a funny, weird dude, as if that will transfer then over to the book or to your impressions of the book. And then there's a third one that we looked at was Ben Marcus's The Flame Alphabet. That was like some of the text from the book, I believe. And then it was all like a cartoon, like something from like 90s MTV crazy surreal cartoon, which was also different. But yeah, it's such a weird, I don't understand why you would choose to do it. But the thing that struck me most about it is like on all of those, if you go look at them, like you're never going to find out about them. It's not like you come across book trailers, right? Like they somehow like the word has to be gotten out, and there's not a very good mechanism for that. And you go looking them up on YouTube and it's like 23,000 people have viewed this. Really?
Yeah. The James Patterson one, the Treasure Hunters one, 6,660 views. The David Reese commercial, 23,000.
Wow.
You know who had one recently though is Sarah Gerard.
Well, yeah, her husband is a filmmaker.
So. Right. I'm going to see what hers was because her book is insanely popular. Okay, that cannot be it. 35. That would not be right.
Called Binary Star.
Yeah. By Book Trailer Ninjas?
No.
Why is it? It's got Sarah's on here. What the hell? God, it's 37. I would just never want to.
Anyway,
yeah, but the numbers are remarkably low, I think, for what they are. For like when you compare it to
the
other
amount of cost to make a book trailer.
Yeah. We're doing one weirdly because this woman made one for one of Andres Newman's stories. It's like 35 seconds long, something like that. Maybe it's a little longer. Maybe it's a minute. But she already had it. So like she's just putting in our cover and stuff and putting in part of the English translation. But I mean, we're going to send it to some places and like because there's like very little cost involved with it. It exists. But like to make one from scratch and spend thousands of dollars. No.
Yeah, it does not seem worth it. I mean, shelf awareness, to go back to them, don't they have a book trailer of the day?
Do they?
I don't ever click on them, but
I never do either.
I feel like it's in there.
That seems legitimate.
Somebody, I don't know what other daily newsletter I could get that would have it besides them.
Me neither. Does Melville House still run their competition for them?
Oh, I don't.
Or did that end? I know they did it like at least once.
They did it twice. I know they did it at least twice.
You're right. It is self-awareness as a book trailer of the day.
Which, I mean, to my mind, is the only place doing anything like that. And shelf awareness just goes to booksellers, which sure matters, but
there is a reader one too.
There is a reader. Yeah, but how many non-publishing people do you know who've ever even heard of shelf awareness? If
I open up my email, I could find their statistics because they sent this to us on a rate card or an ad card. But yeah, the reader one basically is just reviews and very little information about the news. Yeah. For obvious reasons. It has like an interview, like I've just pulled up whatever is right here. And there's a short piece on prose poetry, then some quotes from people with links to articles, something on Terrence Hayes, an interview with him about poetry, and then a shitload of reviews of books, including Jacob Silverman's book, which shout out to Jacob Silverman. He's been on here, hasn't he?
Has he? I don't know.
Oh, no, I don't think he has.
Hey, what number podcast is this? Totally random.
It is, I want to say 94. I can tell you in a second, because I've been waiting for 100. We had the idea that they would just take random clips from like all of them and put it into one.
Total non sequiturs.
This will be number 95.
All right,
getting close, almost cracking 100. But oh man.
Oh, I just noticed I still have this tab open. So have you heard of what is this called? Blog Ads Book Community?
No.
So if you go to the Millions, and I assume many other book blogs, and try to, get their ad rates or whatever, it sends you to this website, which asks you to choose from among different book blogs. And who else is on here? Beatrice, Book Slut, Litopia, Chick Lit Books, Book Mooch. God, these are some horrible titles.
Book Mooch.
Anyway, and then you go through and it asks you, you get their options if you choose the Millions, et cetera, et cetera. So for $500, I can get a 160 by 600 pixels, not very big, ad that'll be at the top right. Yeah, so their logo is on the left. It'll be on the right. That'll run for 1 week. And in that time, they get 57,000 visitors.
Huh.
Or that's per month, I suppose. I don't know how to feel. I mean, 57,000 is pretty good for a book blog, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. 57,000 is impressive. The number of people that ad has any impact on is a much smaller portion of those.
I would think if you're going to the Millions, you're pretty targeted, right?
Yeah, you would think so. So, like, is this an ad here? No. I'm looking at their site. I'm trying to see where they have ads. It just says advertise now on the Millions is that thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then there's no ad there. There's just
the Cuddle Buggery book blog.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the readership drops off fairly quickly here from from Bookmooch, by the way, after I made fun of them, gets 111,000 monthly visitors.
Wow.
Then Millions. LA Observed did not.
Oh.
It's not necessarily just books.
Wait, Bookmooch, is this not a blog, but a place where you give away your books and you get books?
Oh, is that what it is?
That would make sense for why it would get so many people.
Also why it's called Bookmooch.
Yeah. Give books away, get books you want.
Fourth on here is the James Howard Kunstler's Clusterfuck Nation. What on earth?
Oh, that guy. He writes books for Grove, both on nonfiction stuff about design and like contemporary life, and then he also writes a series of science fiction books that sort of like not speculative sci-fi, but like environmental collapse sci-fi.
Okay.
He had some funny bit about like where he's talking about showing people pictures of the like designs of like big box stores and just being like, what does like an architect do where they're just like making a big box store with like this drawing and this design just like late at night and they're probably just like, fuck it, who cares? Like no one cares. Like not even gonna fucking bother. Just done.
Yeah. And
that does like some of that viewpoint does seem to seep through. You see a lot of these places. But man, so ads seem worthless.
I think they seem worthless unless you really commit to doing it, which is, if you watch TV, this is the way it should be done. We all get sick of it when we're watching the NCAA tournament and, we see an ad for Chevy trucks every fourth commercial break, but it's effective, it gets people thinking, do I need a new truck? And then when they go, they're like, oh, I should look at Chevy. They said all this stuff, These things work. I mean, they would not be doing them still if they did not work. And I think, when you do it that often, that regularly, it works. When you do one random ad for a book, it doesn't work.
Right. And there's...
We have neglected to mention one of the other things that goes into advertising for a book, and this goes from small press all the way up to the biggest of all, which is it is the lazy marketer's way of saying that they have done something for a book.
Yeah, that's true.
And let us not forget that certain authors are really difficult and insist upon it no matter what you tell them. And so you have to do it to appease their ego.
Yes.
Also a factor. So sometimes it's even in contracts. You've probably never dealt with any of these contracts, but...
We haven't had to, yeah, we have not. But I can imagine it.
It exists.
So I have the number. Do you want to guess how much was spent in 2014 on advertising total?
Wait, books or in general?
Just in general. I'm just going to see if I can break it down to books, but it's just general.
I mean, it's got to be in the billions.
It is in the billions. Yeah. It's over 180 billion.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And print magazines only take up 8.4% of that.
Oof.
Newspapers take up 9.3%. So the total print part of the advertising budget or advertising amount that's spent in America is 17.7%.
Which is still a lot of money.
Which is a significantly huge amount of money in comparison to most other things. But like TV is 38.1%, digital is 28.2%, mobile being 9.8% of that. Then radio, outdoors, and directories. There was, when I was at Winter Institute, one of the people after you guys did your pitch and you guys left, this woman came that did one on this book called Rich Bitch. That's about some woman who invested lots of money. Is like a CNN, Wall Street analyst person and made a lot of money. So she's giving away her secrets to other women to become financially successful. And apparently, because she's extraordinarily wealthy, she's doing a lot of advertising on her own. So the woman's like, well, she's spending like 6 figures on billboards and stuff like that. So if you see a billboard for this book, it's because she just took it out.
Okay.
If we had an author that was just like renting billboards with ads for their book on it, I think I'd be both like, okay, that's great. But also there's a much better way you could spend your money on advertising than a billboard.
I wonder... LA is a billboard city.
That would make sense, yeah.
I mean, you have to drive everywhere. There's lots of highways sort of traversing the city, etc. New York, not so much.
I would really like to meet someone from New York, though, that sits on the subway and reads one of those ads for a book and is like, yeah, I'm totally going to get that. I'm going to stop right here and just go pick one up.
They're really terrible books that get advertised in this.
Oh my God. They're so bad.
I don't know why. I feel like every third... Okay, there are a lot of, like, totally out there, like, spiritual, religious kind of shit. And then, like, legal thrillers. Like,
yeah.
you've never heard of. Like, these are not... Although you do get, like, Balducci is on there. But, like, there's a lot of legal thrillers. Is that what they think everyone in New York reads all the time? Legal thrillers?
And police procedurals. This is, like, all of it. It's remarkable. Like, one other thing we didn't touch on in relation to this, too, though, is how bad book advertising is. Like, as an overall concept. Like, even in these print ads, it's just a picture of the front of the book. And sometimes, like, a blurb from someone. Or, like, a description that you have to read and parse. Like, this Harvard one in book form has, like, The Cultural Matrix, Understanding Black Youth, edited by Orlando Patterson and Ethan Fossa. And then it has, like, a long blurb from someone about this book. It's like, okay, that's a lot of work. If I watch like, an advertisement for other products, it doesn't make me work that hard. It usually gives me a story, like those terrible ads for Buick or whatever that are on during the NCAA tournament constantly.
Yes.
Like, I'm never buying a Buick, and their ads are confusing because they're basically like, Buicks are ugly. These new Buicks are less ugly. Therefore, everyone's shocked by how less ugly these Buicks are. Therefore, you should buy one. None of which makes sense. There's also those ones that are anti-old people. Have you seen these?
Anti-old people?
They have old women in a car, and they'll be like, there's a series of them. And they're just like, and they're for the Volkswagen Passat, and they're all arguing with each other about like how the one of them begins with like saying rappers like diesel because they can hear their music, their raps over the sound of the engine. And it's like this weird semi-racist, semi-ageist set of commercials, but at least they're telling me a story of something that's not just like, this is our car. Here's a quote from someone that says this is a good car. But that's book advertising in a nutshell. Like, here's a picture. Buy it.
It's really hard with fiction, especially to advertise. I remember when, oh God, I'm blanking on the name of it. The World is Flat?
Oh, right. The Thomas Friedman book?
It was either that one or the other, The Economist one. What was that called?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, one of those had like advertisement that were like, you know, they would spit out these random facts, not on like the Harper's List, but the Index. So those were their advertisements. So with nonfiction, like you can actually have fun with the concept and the idea, and maybe make a joke and you know, that. Fiction, very hard to do much anything with that in print. I mean, and then
the trailers are just weird.
And the trailers are just weird because there's nothing to do with anything.
So don't. And looking this up, McDonald's spent more than $988 million on advertising in 2014. Which is actually the basis for my rant, too, when I get to it.
That's funny. I just was listening to a podcast, The Gist, and they had the guy who had invented the concept of Ronald McDonald and the entire other host of, like, characters.
Like the Hamburglar?
And Grimace. And, yeah.
What the fuck is Grimace's point? Why did he invent that one?
Grimace was meant, according to this guy, Grimace initially was invented as a cohort of the Hamburglar, who was only... So the Hamburglars stole the hamburgers, and Grimace was meant to steal the shakes, the milk.
That's why he's, like, so fat.
That's why he's a big purple blob.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
they were, like, evil at first, and then they were like, we got to tone this down a little bit. So they Grimace sort of goofy and fun, and they gave the Hamburglar that stupid thing he says.
What does he say?
Rubble, rubble, rubble?
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough. Oh, my God.
All right.
Well, do you want me to rant first, since your thing's going to be more important? The only thing I want to rant about...
Talk about this is like a mutual rant, if you will. I cannot let this pass, because making fun of Jonathan Franzen has become a sort of pet hobby here of the podcast. Mostly me, because I just bring him up to make fun of him.
I use him as an example all the time, yeah.
But he has an article which I did not read more than a paragraph of, just because it's Jonathan Franzen and his writing is awful, about climate change and how, it's called Carbon Capture Has climate change made it harder for people to care about conservatism? Let me just read the first sentence, because this will give you an idea of how bad why people think this is good writing. It's just beyond me. Last September, as someone who cares more about birds than the next man, I was following the story of the new stadium that the Twin Cities are building for their football Vikings.
Wow.
There's so much condescension in, what is that, 25 words?
That reminds me, the football Vikings just reminds me of Greg Easterbrook.
Yes, exactly. Or the way they say New York Football Giants on Sports Center.
Ah, Jesus.
As though anyone is still thinking, oh, the Giants, do they play in San Francisco or New York? No, that's not a question.
I'm really confused by this thing that happened 20 years before I was born.
Anyway, so if you want to hate read some Jonathan Franzen, it's in the New Yorker this week.
The thing about Jonathan Franzen and a lot of these people that follow him this ilk too is that they can't begin their articles without referring to themselves and positioning themselves as somehow knowledgeable and more aware and important than someone else's observations.
Yes.
Like as the beginning of that very beginning thing of someone who cares more about birds than the next man, therefore blank, I was following. Like it's just so obnoxious. It's so obnoxious. Yeah, I'm not going to read this thing.
No, you should not.
Oh, then I'm going to flip through the little images here because those are entertaining. And there I'm done. Screw Franzen. That new book's cover is so ugly too. Have you seen this?
I thought it was a joke.
It has to be a joke. Like it just has to be a joke. But no, I don't think it is.
Oh.
Terrible. Jeremy from Powell's pointed it out to me because I hadn't seen it, and he's like, "Just Google this now. You're gonna hate it."
I thought that was a joke.
I don't think so. But speaking of advertising rant, so last night I was at the gym and I was watching the weird McDonald's All-American dunk contest for high school students because couldn't find anything else that was on their little TVs, and whatever. That was what it was, and it was weird. But in the middle of it, they had Jabari Parker on there, who's played at Duke and went and plays for Milwaukee now and is like all busted up, right? And they were talking to him about how his face is on a McDonald's cup now. I think maybe locally in Wisconsin. And his quote was, "Well, I'm really glad about that because I went to McDonald's a lot as a kid, so it brings back good memories, and it's just a little bit that I can give back to them." Which overall just made me feel gross and bothered. Like, I don't think that should be encouraging people to be eating McDonald's to begin with necessarily, but for that just to be such a weird statement, like giving back to McDonald's for all that what is done for Jabari Parker. Like, are they healing his knee with their Shamrock Shakes? Like, I don't think so. I mean, maybe because he was in a McDonald's All-American, but even that's just a weird advertising thing. The whole thing was just troublesome to me, and I did not like it. Did not approve.
Well, this goes back. I don't know if you read this on Gawker, probably around the time of the Super Bowl, and it was about McDonald's. Oh yeah, it was about McDonald's because of their ridiculous Super Bowl ad by Hamilton Nolan, who's of course like the anarchist writer for Gawker, talking about how brands are not our friends. You know, like we don't owe them anything. These people are trying to convince us to buy products. They're trying to separate us from our money. And the idea that, like, Jabari Parker needs to give back, he'd already paid for the food that he ate.
Yeah.
He does not owe McDonald's anything. And yet I do think that maybe he was trying to say that, the McDonald's All-American experience was beneficial to him in the process of, getting to the NBA, et cetera. He clearly didn't say that. And, in a vacuum, his statement just sounds really odd. I agree with you. Somebody should have coached him up a little bit and made that statement sound a little better.
Yeah, if it would have been about the game or the experience, that would make sense. It was about his face on a plastic mug of soda.
Yeah. I always thought
I forgot about those McDonald's Super Bowl ads. Those were awful.
They were terrible. I always thought it was odd that Kobe Bryant had an endorsement from Sprite, which they would show during, basketball games. And you're like, wait, so he's working out and then Sprites? Like,
there's no way.
That just doesn't make any sense. Like,
when I get done working out, I sure like something that's like thick and sticky and like filled with goo going into my body, because nothing feels better than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Weird.
Anyway.
So weird. Okay, so you're rave, which
Well,
I fully endorse.
okay, well, I was going to rave about our friend Mark Binelli. He has an article in this week's, or whatever, last weekend's New York Times Sunday Magazine, because the whole issue, and you had mentioned Terrence Hayes earlier, the feature articles of that issue all had to do with prison. And Terrence Hayes, of course, was in prison and is now a poet, and a lot of his poetry does have to do with prison, and he still does a lot of outreach to youth, trying to get them not to go to prison, and then rehabilitation and that sort of thing. It was okay. I mean, I didn't think Terrence Hayes' the discussion about him was particularly amazing or anything, but it's good that he was in there. I'm glad more people might read his poetry and know who he is.
Ironically, he's going to be here on Tuesday.
Oh, really? He's
a week from today.
He is a really nice guy. I met him. We did the books at Penguin or Viking. Mm-hmm. Slovak was his editor.
Oh, so yeah.
He's really nice. But right after that is an article by Mark Binelli called Inside America's Toughest Federal Prison. And it's all about and this is a ridiculously long title for a prison, which is why it's got a nickname, the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, otherwise known as the ADX, which is in Florence, Colorado. This is the Supermax, basically. The highest security federal prison, civilians, by the way, in America. I would think that certain military prisons are probably more high security, if that's possible. But this is a place where, like, the Unabomber was here. The underwear bomber is there. Who else? I'm looking here. Michael Swango, the doctor who poisoned up to 60 of his patients. Zacharias Moussaoui from the 9/11 conspiracy. Ramzi Youssef from the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and Eric Rudolph from the Atlanta Olympic bombing, Terry Nichols from Oklahoma City bombing, et cetera, et cetera. All these people are there. You're in solitary 23 hours a day. All hope of rehab is just completely gone. I mean, mostly because these guys are serving life sentences. But Mark did interview a guy named Jones. What is his name? Rodney Jones, who had been in this prison for assaulting other prisoners at other prisons, and it had happened so many times that he eventually got sent there, and it scared him straight. The 8 years, or I think whatever it is, they sent there. Anyway, it's a wonderful article, and the reason it's newsworthy right now is because there's a case being heard before the Supreme Court that has to do with imprisoning and sending, mentally handicapped people to a prison like this without any hearing, without any services, without any medication available to them, because this place just does not do any of that stuff. And Jones, who was there, had written a letter to somebody at this nonprofit because he had met somebody who he knew had an IQ of 61 and got sent there without it. Anyway, they're finally bringing a suit against this prison, and it's horrible. And I feel like I'm rambling here. A lot of people have their pet social issue things. Prisons are mine, because I feel that we do very little in terms of rehab in this country, and it drives me insane. We do not believe that prisoners can be rehabilitated. We make it impossible for them to re-enter society. We shame them forever. I think it's just horrible, horrible, horrible. Anyway, I cannot leave without... That was my rave. That was going to be my rave. And then last night at 9:30, an article popped up on Gawker that is the greatest article I've read in a long time. It is about a coyote who is squatting in an apartment in Queens in New York City. I am not making this up.
Oh my God.
There's a coyote at large in Queens, and they think it's squatting in an apartment.
That's pretty awesome. God
bless you, coyote. This is my spirit animal. This animal that can survive any situation. God, that's awesome. And there's a photo of a coyote. The coyote who, by the way, escaped. He was on the roof of a bar at one point and then somehow got away.
The Gawker article that I would plug in there as my rave is from their conspiracy theory month. is the one entitled "A Conspiracy Theory I Invented, but It's Real: Elliptical Machines Lie," which I just like on a whole. But that's crazy about the coyote.
Yeah, it's insane. They actually captured one on the Upper West Side. I forget where it was, like on a basketball court.
Whoa.
Not too long ago. These things, they are survivors. I mean, there are tons of stories of these things in, like, you know, streets of LA in the middle of the night. My friends who live in Silver Lake, who have a backyard and a garden, came out one morning and found their neighbor's dog just totally dismembered and gutted, and it was done by a coyote. So,
man, we used to have in Michigan all the time. It wouldn't be coyotes, but like deer would always get into weird places because, especially in the fall when like marijuana had grown and was like at the picking season, that they would eat all the marijuana and get super fucked up and end up in like the middle of like Burger King's or in the middle of like a mall or like on all sorts of random places, just like out of their minds, which always used to entertain me.
Well, deer, I mean, the deer population in this country is like skyrocketing because of urban planning. Is oddly, like, the spread of the suburbs have actually made it easier for deer to survive. So,
yeah.
And nobody hunts anymore. So,
right.
Coyotes. I saw a few coyotes when I was in Joshua Tree last summer, and they are fantastic. They just wandered through the yard a couple times. They're great. They're really great. Anyway, totally unrelated. But please go read Mark's article.
Yeah, definitely. I'll include a link to Mark's article on here, too. I'm going to write this right now before I forget all the things I plan on including.
I can't think of anything else.
The James Patterson video. Certainly. and Mark's thing.
Well, if we don't do one of these next week, you have fun at AWP. It's in the Twin Cities, right?
Yeah. That's going to be nice.
I like the Twin Cities.
Me too. I like them quite a bit. I think that'll be fun. The fact that we fly in Tuesday night and come back on Sunday seems a long, long time to be at AWP.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, Wednesday we set up, and then it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we fly home Sunday morning.
Yeah, it's a long flight. Long time.
Who's going from New Directions this year?
I think Mika and Tynan are going.
Oh, okay.
So you will see them there.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. And I think they have something planned. I really don't. I'm out of the loop on this.
Do you know how I got so many of these AWP invites, and I've just not looked at any of them. Like, I didn't even print them out. I just, like, I'll figure it out when I get there. Like, that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
But, oh well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Later.
You know, when I get done working out, I sure like something that's like thick and sticky and like filled with goo going into my body, because nothing feels better than that.